towards your goal, you're going to find out things that help you out. So one of the places that is one of my comedy homes is Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank.
Yeah,
and
great
Flappers,
space.
I literally found online, they had a flow chart, the career of a stand-up comedian. And it said, first you start doing open mics, then you start hosting, then you start doing this. Like, I was just like, yay, a roadmap. Oh my, amazing. Right?
That's amazing. Yeah, honestly. Like, how wonderful to have some clear, specific
Absolutely.
steps, right?
So roadmap, and look, sometimes a roadmap is not going to be as literal as this one was. Sometimes a roadmap might be a person who can help you with your goal. Happy 100th podcast episode. That's right. Today's episode is the Harness the Power of Planning podcast number 100. Woo! That's a goal in and of itself. And today we are talking all about goals. And in part 1, Natascha and I talk about my goal of producing a stand-up comedy show and the 2.5 years it took me to get there and the steps I took. And then we talk through a goal that she has about making more money, and I give her some suggestions on how to work towards that. On this episode, starting now. Hello!
Hi.
Welcome everyone to the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. I'm Alegre Ramos, and this is my friend Natascha Corrigan.
Hi.
And if you've joined me before, you know that I am all about helping you prioritize yourself and your goals. And today is our 100th episode. I know, the scream, oh, or the Macaulay Culkin. Or I feel like I should be ringing a bell. Woohoo! 100 episodes. Oh my goodness. I cannot believe it.
Is that backwards when I do it like this?
No, that looks right. Yes. Wow, 100 episodes. I can't believe it. Okay, before we get started, or before we lose track of getting started, I just want to say today's episode is all about coming up with actionable plans for your goals. Natascha and I are going to talk about a goal of mine that I've been working on for the last 2.5 years, and perhaps a goal of hers. And then after Natascha and I, I'm going to have my friend Angela on, and we're going to talk about her goal of wanting to improve her health and how we can get her there. And then my friend Christine and I are going to talk about her goal of helping to ensure that she's raising resilient kiddos. So I think that these are really relatable goals that a lot of us are thinking about right now. And I'm not used to having my hair down. So I might be like, oh, I have hair.
It looks amazing though. Honestly, I love it.
I felt like I was having a good hair day. So I decided for episode 100 to put it down. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. But as you know, I like to start with pulling a card from this little deck of cards. So let's see what the universe has decided we need to talk about today. The doors we open and close each day decide the lives we live. Flora, I'm not sure if it's Whitmore or Whitemore. Flora Whitemore. Flora Whitmore. The doors we open and close each day decide the lives we live. Yes. Yes. Actually, yeah, Natascha, you and I were kind of talking about this, I don't know, maybe a dozen episodes ago when we were talking about, I think we were talking about advice we'd give our younger selves. And one of the things that I would have said to my younger self was, opportunities are rarer than you think. If there's something you want to do, don't pass up on it thinking it's going to come back around, because chances are it's not.
Right. Don't be afraid to be imperfect inside of it, right? You think, oh, I'll wait till I'm perfect before I answer that call, right? Yeah. This quote is very, it's causes a teensy bit of anxiety for me. Like, you know me, I have a hard time making decisions, and I have a hard, so, like, oh my goodness. And often what I'll do is perceptually keep all the doors open in some way, but that's also not actually really what's happening, right? You've got to choose something, right? Or choose a couple things. You can't keep all the doors open all the time. It's just
exactly.
Yeah.
Although I am old enough to say that sometimes the door does reopen in surprising ways, which is actually kind of a perfect segue into the topic we want to talk about, which is the goal that I have been working on for the last 2.5 years is to produce my own stand-up comedy show. And that came to fruition exactly 12 days ago on March 29th. I produced my first comedy show. Natascha was there.
It was fantastic. It was really fantastic. It was so fun, so funny. It was just a perfect mix of people. You put together such a great lineup, and what a great space too. The place that you did, what's very welcoming and just,
Yes.
it was great.
Yes. And so let me just back up a little bit and just explain how that taps into this quote right here, which is the doors we open and close each day decide the lives we live. So I have always loved stand-up comedy. And when I was in my 20s, I did do some stand-up comedy. However, I closed that door because first of all, the stand-up comedy culture 30 years ago was very different than it is now. It was not very welcoming to women. The comedy was a lot angrier and meaner. And also, if you remember back then, I don't know every state, but in California, you could still smoke everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And I don't like smoke. And so being in a smoke-filled room and driving from smoke-filled room to smoke-filled room every night
Yeah.
just did not sound like how I wanted to spend my time. And so I closed that door firmly. And honestly, without a lot of really, I hadn't thought about it much since then until 2019 when I saw this amazing comedian, Bobby Oliver, Bobbie. And actually, it was a comedy club that I hosted the show that I had 12 days ago. And I saw Bobby Oliver, and Bobby markets herself as a punk Southern feminist, which I feel like suits her perfectly. You might be wondering, what does that mean? Well,
Yeah.
go to Amazon Prime, buy her comedy special. It's amazing. Highly recommend it. And so I saw her in 2019, and first of all, she was just so fantastically funny. But also, seeing her made me realize that comedy had changed a lot. A lot of it has to do with streaming because now there's so many ways for people to get their comedy to its audience. And she started me back on my comedy journey. And so that was in 2019. I saw her. And I guess it just sort of planted the seed. And then 2.5 years ago, well, the pandemic, literally the pandemic happened. I saw her. No, sorry. I did not see her in 2019. I saw her in January 2020. I saw her. Yes.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So
I saw her in January 2020. Pandemic happened. Obviously, everything shut down. And then about 2.5 years ago, when things were opening up enough, I decided. And so this is kind of getting into how I had this goal. Literally, from the very moment that I started doing Comedy Guide, I knew I wanted to do a show. And I kind of thought that the show might be comedians, like older comedians. I think I had mentioned this. I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast or just to you, Natascha, but I had mentioned this idea of doing a show of comedians over 40.
Yeah.
And partially that's because I just really enjoy the comedy of comedians over 40. But as I was out there meeting people, I don't know, it just there wasn't that. In Spanish, there's a great phrase called yo tengo ganas, and it means like I have like an urge or I have a desire, or like like you don't really. For me, it's hard for me to do anything if I don't tengo ganas to do it, right? If I'm not feeling that like inner momentum towards doing the thing, then it kind of doesn't happen. Aside from taxes, right?
Right. Inevitable. Taxes are inevitable.
Yeah. No tengo ganas to do taxes, but I got to do it. But when it comes to these other goals in your lives, you have to have kind of this inner fire towards this thing. And I wasn't feeling that. So again, let me back up. So I decided I wanted to create a comedy show. Well, guess what? One does not just create a comedy show, right? Because first of all,
one does not just create.
Yeah, you don't just decide to create one and do it. You have to know comedians. You have to know spaces. You have to be able to sell the tickets. As a producer, are you going to perform in the show yourself or not? I wanted to perform in the show. Okay, if I'm going to perform in a show with my name on it that I'm producing, I need to be at a certain level of comedy in order to do that. So all of these things factor into whatever the goal is that you want to do. You can't, I think a lot of people write down, produce a comedy show as a goal, and then never think about all the things that they need to have in place in order for that comedy show not just to happen, but to happen with an audience and to be fun and to, my show sold out. I made money. I am a paid comedian.
So, and therefore,
I am a professional comedian. It's actually my second time being paid. I just want to, so.
Listen, you're a successful professional.
So these are all the things one has to think about when one has a goal, right? So I started with open mics, and open mics happen all over the place, at least in the Los Angeles area. I know in smaller towns, open mics happen, but they might be mixed open mics. It might be comedy and music, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or it might be an open mic that doesn't happen at a comedy club, but it happens one night a week at a music club. Like, for instance, I've done comedy in Hawaii, and Hawaii doesn't have a lot of comedy clubs, but they have like one night of comedy at these clubs. So that was my first goal, was to start doing open mics and to kind of find a home, if you will, like a place where I could feel comfortable going regularly among other comedians that I enjoyed, for networking. And also too, as a woman, a place that I felt safe going to regularly, because a lot of comedy happens at night. There's some places where the parking is a little sketchy.
Yeah. Because you can find an open mic here in LA every single night of the week, for sure. Same thing with the music and so forth. So lucky for you, you get to kind of cherry pick a little bit which ones you like and which ones feel good for you and that kind of thing.
Yes, exactly. So I was able to find a few, Dow being one of them, where I could kind of make it my home and really just focus my energy, because that's the thing with goals, is you have to make it accessible to you. If I had to drive an hour to get to that open mic, it was going to be less likely that I was going to go regularly than if I could drive 20 minutes.
Right. It
does. It makes a big difference. If it's in a safe part of town, or if there's free parking that's lit and safe or whatever, all of these things factor in to whether or not you're going to do it, right? If you, for instance, maybe you've heard me talk about the fact that my husband is a surfer. It's actually part of my comedy sometimes. And the challenge with surfing is that so many things need to be aligned. Like, literally the elements need to be aligned.
It's so crazy. Surfing is wild to me because of all that.
So many things need to be aligned. So you have to think about all these things that, like, for instance, if you want to be a professional snowboarder and you live in a tropical island, you're going to have to move. So those types of things make a big difference in terms of whether or not you're going to be able to work towards your goal. And so I was able to find some places, and one of the places I found, which I did not know this in advance. And so this is kind of the magic of stepping out and taking that first step towards your goal. You're going to find out things that help you out. So one of the places that is one of my comedy homes is Flappers Comedy Club in Burbank. And Flappers, I literally found online, they had a flow chart, the career of a stand-up comedian. And it said, first you start doing open mics, then you start hosting, then you start doing this. Like, I was just like, yay, a roadmap. Oh my, amazing. Right?
That's amazing. Yeah, honestly. Like, how wonderful to have some clear, specific steps, right?
So roadmap, and look, sometimes a roadmap is not going to be as literal as this one was. Sometimes a roadmap might be a person who can help you with your goal. Sometimes it'll be a combination. So I found this roadmap and I said, oh, okay, so I am going to open mics. The next step is I want to do the hosting. How do I do the hosting? Oh, first of all, to become a host at Flappers, which I am now a host at Flappers, to become a host at Flappers, first you have to take their workshop on hosting. Now, not every comedy club will have this, but I said, sure, why not? Let's cut down my learning time here. I'm going to take this class on hosting.
Yeah.
And so I went from doing open mics to doing a couple workshops at Flappers to being invited to perform at Flappers. And then because Flappers records all of their comedy events, I was able to buy my own videos that I could then use to submit to other places to say, here's my 5 minutes, because that's what you have to do. And that's how I started getting booked in other places. And as this was happening, obviously my confidence is growing as a comedian, and I'm starting to meet people. And one of the things that I noticed was that a lot of my people becoming comedy friends were not over 40. So not only am I, no tango ganas to do this late bloomer show, but also I'm not even meeting the people I need to meet to put the show on. And a lot of my comedy is about the fact that I am Asian and Latin. And so I said, you know what? One of my best comedy friends, she's Chinese and young. One of my other best comedy friends, he's Latin and young. I said, what if I put on a show that was all Asian and Latin comedians? And I'm not kidding, it was less than 5 seconds later that the name of the show came to me, which is Soy Saucy.
Which is a phenomenal name. I love it. I love that name so much. And look, you had this idea, you put it out there, you had this idea maybe, but you weren't like so attached to this idea of over 40 having to be, that was a place to start off, right? That was a springboard. And then the community or the universe or whatever came to you and was like, hey, because it built it, like you got your people, you didn't have to find them. They found you, right? Because you were vibing. You had that soy saucy vibe even before you knew what to call it. And it came to you. That's really a great example of how to, move forward on your goals, have this idea, have some kind of outline, but also open to what shows up.
Yeah. And look at what's possible because, I have, as those of you who watch the show, I have quite a few things happening in my life. And so I don't have the time. I mean, some comedians literally, we call it going up. Some comedians go up 20 to 30 times a week. I spoke to Bobby, she's one of my comedy mentors. And I said, Bobby, what's the least amount that I realistically need to do? And she said, you need to go up at least once a week minimum because, and I totally agree with her as a public speaker. I see this too. Public speaking is such a multi-brain, it uses so many parts of your brain activity, and you need to keep those networks all knit together through practice because when you're not doing something regularly, right? Like playing the piano, you've all felt that, or speaking a foreign language, those networks break down because your brain's like, oh, this is no longer important. So I'm not going to support this network anymore.
Yeah.
And so the public speaking, stand-up comedy, I would say they're both similar in that way, where you have to be exercising it regularly in order to keep it tight and sharp and fresh. So Bobby said once a week, and I was like, great, I can do that. And so I put that in my schedule. Once a week, I go up, I make it happen. Sometimes it's pretty, sometimes it's not pretty, but I show up. And chip away at that goal. And so there we go. 2.5 years. My first comedy show sold out. I actually have a conversation this week with the location that I want to book for the second one. I already have people asking me, when are the tickets for the second one going on sale?
That's amazing.
And I also have comedians pitching themselves to Soy Saucy. So
this is amazing. I hope everybody's taking in, like, this is not a small thing that Allegra's talking about here. This is significant. And the fact that you're being sought after only one show, you have comedians going like, hey, how can I get in on it?
Yeah, well, it feels like it's actually tapped into something that people wanted. Maybe they didn't know they wanted it until they heard it, But I mean, it was such an interesting show. It was
Great. It
there
was
was
great.
a synergy there that I was
Yes.
hoping for, but you can't really plan for. I was like, "Am I gonna be the only one who gets this because I am Asian and Latin?"
Yeah, I don't think being neither Asian nor
Right.
Latin, I totally thoroughly enjoyed it. Yeah, for sure. I can absolutely attest to, it being exactly synergistic and really just funny. You want a comedy show to be funny, and it was very funny and lots of different kind of flavors to go with the soy
Yes.
saucy theme. Flavors of
Yes,
funny.
many different
Yeah.
flavors of funny. So, did you have a goal that you wanted to talk about?
I am, so I have something that is very hands-on and very different, very
Mhm.
very
Let's do it.
esoteric than we've talked about in the past. And it's very specific. I want to hit a certain
Mhm.
number in my work this year as far as like earnings go, right? And so there is like a very specific, like in fact, excuse me, I don't have that specific number yet, but
Interesting.
I want to have a specific number. So I think that's probably the first goal. I want something that's realistic, but a little bit unrealistic, like
Stretch.
like a smidge past
Yeah.
realistic. Yeah, a little bit of a stretch. And and as you know, with me, the most difficult thing for me is being consistent around something. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, so do this, this, and this, and you'll
Mhm.
make more money, right? And so there is kind of a structure, like you said, there is a roadmap. But I think that the toughest thing for me is to find a way in which it's realistically consistent for me to show up. So I love that you mentioned about Bobby saying once a month, excuse me,
Mhm.
once a week, and so finding a realistic, because I could sit here and be like, all right, I want to do 8 hours of this every single day. And I know that that is something that within 4 to
Right.
5 days, I will
Right.
not hit that goal. So that's the main thing is to find a realistic way to keep showing up, or excuse me, a realistic structure where it'll be easy for me to be consistent, or at least it'll be realistic for me to be consistent. Maybe not easy. Some days won't be easy, I'm sure. Some days you probably are like, oh, I don't want to go to that open mic. But you went and you made it
Well,
happen,
and now I
right?
have no choice because I'm a host of an open mic. So I have it's
You
built in
have to
that
show up.
accountability for me. Okay,
That's
so when
so
it comes to
fun.
choosing your
That's
number, you're right on the mark. You want it to be realistic, but with a little stretch. And there's a lot of brain science behind why you want that. Because if you can't believe the number, then your brain will kind
right.
of automatically make that goal less important to you because it's not
Yeah.
realistic. So maybe you
Hmm.
take whatever you made last year and add, I don't know, 25% to that. Does that
Yes,
feel
that's
in that?
I'm actually gonna do so I'm gonna use, that's a really good at 25%. I'm gonna use actually the number that I made the
Mm.
most money
Oh,
that
perfect.
year, and then add, because last year
Right,
wasn't
right,
so
right. Yeah.
great. That's why
Yeah, no,
we're
that's great.
so no, the best number plus 25%. That's great. Because I was like, do I double it? Do I? And that might be
Right.
too much of a stretch. So 20% is
Mhm.
great. Great. Best year plus 25%. Um, and then, like I said, then the next thing is to like, because of the nature of teaching and really adhering sometimes to other people's
Yeah.
schedules, and really making it so that I have a roster and so forth. My office hours have been like all over
Mm.
the place, right? And so I think the next thing to do is to set some really specific office hours.
Okay.
Still have those, like odd, you know 7 p.m. on a
Yes.
Tuesday, or that. So those will still, of course, happen because I have to make sure I'm in line with when my students
Right.
are available, right? But to just have some specific office hours, regardless if I'm actively, engaging with a student or client, to still have
So
some
wait, when you
office
say
hours
office
that are.
hours, do you mean so your students can reach you, or is that time that you're gonna be doing business and making phone calls and networking?
Yes. So yeah. So either A, that would be time where I'm actually actively engaged
Mhm.
with the client, and when that's not happening, then to also just be specifically working on marketing, outflow, that
Okay.
kind of thing. Because I had like a specific time for that once a
Mhm.
week, like the outflow, and that just
Mm.
wasn't enough, really,
Mhm.
ultimately. Um, Yeah. So to make that specific, like a specific daily office hour
Right.
situation.
So maybe if you just double that and say twice a week, and I would
That's
make one of those during daytime hours, because while it's great to have your students reaching out to you, I don't know the age of all your students, but I do know some of them are school age, so they'll need to get back to you after
Yeah.
school. But,
Right.
There's a saying about swallow the frog, about doing the thing that makes you the
Yeah.
most uncomfortable, and I'm sensing a little bit
Yeah.
that that's one of the challenges for you, is the reaching out for new clients. A and so if you set an early morning office hour, that might be one of the things where you swallow the frog and you're like, "Okay, I'm gonna make some calls," and then it's just done, and it's not hanging over your head all day long.
Yeah. And morning is, we've gone through like what's am I a tiger or
Right,
I'm
your
sorry, a
chronotype.
lion or that my chronotype. Thanks, that's the word. And so early morning isn't necessarily the best for me, but
Yeah,
late
yeah,
morning
like
is
10,
for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, just something
Yeah,
before noon.
for sure before noon.
And just
Yeah,
have your set
absolutely.
day that you are making calls and stuff, and then that'll give you a whole week to sort of, like, recover from however you're feeling about that, and also to plan for the next one, but you still have that
Yes,
evening time that you've set aside for doing office work, so yeah.
right. I do like having two set chunks. And then the thing that I get to declare here
Yes.
publicly is guarding those
Mm,
times, right? Because when like if something came up, which would have normally been my business hour kind of situation or business chunk, if something came up, I was real quick to be like, oh, I could do that later, and just really enjoying that.
yeah.
Yeah, just really, really guarding that, putting the guardrails around that, being really protective of that, and having some boundaries around it for
So that
myself.
sounds great, and look, you're gonna be
Yeah,
doubling, right? It might not sound a lot to people to say go from 1 day to 2 days, but when you think about it, you're doubling your office time.
yeah,
So that's actually
yeah.
really big.
Yeah, it is. Honestly, this, as you know, anything you put your attention on and put like attention and energy outflow will come back. And so all of that kind of had taken
Yeah,
a
yeah.
dive. So this,
Cool, I love it,
excellent.
great.
Thanks, Allegra. Yeah, thanks for just kind of honing that in for me and having giving me a space to declare it out loud and all be really specific. I
Happy to.
appreciate
Thanks
it.
for being here on my 100th, and I can't wait to check in and see where you are in 6 months on this goal.
I can't wait to see your next comedy
Yes,
show.
yes.
And thank you. Yes, check in
Thank you
6
so
months. Love it.
much. Bye. To those of you watching right now, thank you for joining us for the 100th episode of the Harness the Power of Planning. I'm going to say goodbye to my friends right now so that I can just close this out. And thank you so much for joining me for this episode. If you are ready to take your planning journey to the next level, go to my website, bywdreams.com. You can find out about all my books and courses there. If you want to work with me personally, reach out to me. We could figure that out as well. And remember that planning makes everything easier. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Harness the Power of Planning podcast. Be sure to rate and subscribe wherever you listen.